Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. Ul'dah is the home of the Colosseum and the Gladiators Guild, where warriors train to fight day in and day out in hopes of winning enough gil to be able to buy anything, even a spot in the Syndicate. While joining the criminal leaders of Ul'dah may not be high on the Warrior of Light's bucket list, training with some of the best fighters and getting to beat them is something he's more than interested in doing. Of course, before you can join, Mila, the leader of the guild who has the title of the First Sword, has to approve of you. She looks you over and you seem strong enough. But of course you have to prove that you are, and you do that by taking a list of small creatures nearby and slaughtering them with your sword. I'll never understand why these people think it's a real test of strength to be able to cut down a squirrel with a saber, but you want to join and that's your first task, so it's got to be done. Since you've proven that the likes of squirrels and ladybugs are no match for your combat skills, Mila sent you to the quicksand because Momodai is having problems with a gang of lamenting marauders harassing people outside of her tavern. The fact that these men are harassing regular folks means they're cowards, and you may not even have to draw your sword if you can intimidate them enough. Simply taunting the men outside makes them leave their victims alone, but the guy inside of the tavern is made of sterner stuff, and he decides to kill you for bothering him. However, a man who was drinking at the table nearby steps in. At first the marauder is talking tough to him, until he notices the very unique sword on the man's waist. Apparently the sword is extremely rare and carried by the man with the title of Sword of Nald. Whatever that title means, it must be serious, because the marauder not only leaves, but he apologizes first. The guy with the strange sword commends you on your bravery, but he thinks you were a little bit stupid for confronting the guy, but that's only because he hasn't seen you fight. The man's name is Aldis, and he says that he would buy you a drink, but he's broke, so he can't. Don't know why he even brought it up then if he didn't have any money, but you know. He claims that he used to be a gladiator, but now he just wanders around doing stuff. He would talk to you more, but he has a beautiful woman waiting for him in his room, but he's got more important things to do than stand there with you. When he leaves, Momodai is shocked that Aldis is even still alive, a fact that she wants you to keep from Mila because apparently the two of them have history, and it's not the good kind. You barely talk anyway, so keeping secrets is your strongest ability. When you get back to the guild, Mila has already heard about how you made the marauders run away, and she's proud of you, but there's been reports of some raiders attacking merchants near Scorpion's Crossing, and it's probably the same men who you just ran off, so you head to the crossing to hunt them down again. They robbed a merchant, but they haven't gotten far, so you catch up, put them down, and get the merchant's stuff back. Since that was everything he owned, he's really grateful that you got it all back for him. And of course, Mila is happy that you completed the job, which is a part of your training, because while these criminals were weak, the next ones you deal with might not be, so you have to be ready. The next battle comes quickly because Mila hears word of a few violent murders in the area. The people were killed with spears, which makes her think that the culprits might be lancers. While the attacks are dangerous to the city, it's only a matter of time before a gladiator gets attacked too. A part of the lancers group was hanging around Stone's Throw, and they're likely the people you're after, so Mila sent you to check. The lancers are attacking a gladiator when you get there, and after you deal with them, the man says that the people were looking for a guy named Aldis. Even though he's clearly not Aldis, they still tried to kill him too. When you get back to Mila and tell her about the Lancers, she's confused about why the Duskwights would be coming all the way from the Black Shroud. But before you can tell her about Aldis, Bruce comes running in screaming about a lot of Lancers hiding out in the tunnels near Blackbrush Station. She tells you to go with him to deal with them since you were already working on that problem anyway. But she probably should have sent more than just the two of you since there are quite a few Lancers, but the two of you managed to handle it. When you finally get back and tell Mila about Aldis, she can't even believe he's still alive. But there's still more work to do, so there's no time to dwell on that now. A request came from both the Immortal Flames and the Brass Blades for some help keeping an outpost at Camp Drybone secure. The Amonja have been raiding caravans in the area, and even though they've always been at war with the people, these attacks are too frequent to ignore. She's already sent a few men out there, and she wants you to go and join them. Your assistance comes at the right time, and you finish off the last of the Amonja before they can kill anyone else. One of the other gladiators sticks around to help the merchant so you can go back and report to Mila. When you make it back, Aldis actually shows up, catching Mila completely off guard. She recovers fast and demands to know where he's been for all these years. She thought he was dead, and him just showing up after having dishonored the guild makes her threaten to stab him. Her emotions are a little bit all over the place, which is apparently exactly how Aldis remembers her. He wants you to meet him at the quicksand because he wants some company, and when you show up, which he didn't expect, he seems like he really did just want someone to talk to, and he starts by complimenting you on your swordsmanship and your seeming strength of character. As for that very unique sword of his, the thing is called Frenzy, and the reason it's so unique is it was made by a very skilled blacksmith named Geralt. He made 2 identical swords for 2 champions of the Colosseum. Aldis starts to tell you something about the man who has the sword's twin, but robed assassins burst in with the sole purpose of removing Aldis's head, but since he's attached to it, he decides to take theirs, and you go to back him up. Even though you're outnumbered, the 2 of you come out on top. Aldis knows who sent the men, although he didn't think he'd send mercenaries after him in broad daylight in a crowded tavern. He would continue the conversation, but the attack ruined the mood, so he decides to pick up your meeting another time. While you were fighting in the quicksand, another member of the guild got attacked and seriously injured by what Mila thinks is some more bounty hunters. It may even be a trap to lure out Aldis, but you still have to go and help. He called and said he was taking shelter at the Coffer and Coffin, so Mila wants you to take him a potion to help him make it back to the city. You find him and he's in bad shape, but the potion does help, which makes me really want to know what's in those things. The gladiator can't really tell you much because the attack happened so fast. He doesn't even know why they left him alive, but he knows that somebody had to have seen something. A guy at the station saw a man in a purple robe talking on a link pearl, saying something about the wrong man in the silver bazaar. After you check the spot where the man got attacked, you find a strange ring that you take to Wymond, who's in the business of knowing pretty much everything about everything, and he knows what the ring is. It's not something you should be flashing around. The ring is a symbol of the Olicron, a criminal organization that's grown pretty large pretty fast in Ul'dah. They have connections to pretty much every organization in the city, and they're so bad that Wymond doesn't want any part in whatever you all have gotten yourselves into. Mila finds it hard to believe that the olicron are behind the attack, but one of her people came back saying a group of bandits are heading toward the Silver Bazaar, looking for a man with a large bounty on his head. The people who live at the bazaar will be in real danger if the group of bandits starts going through their property hunting their target, and there aren't enough brass blades in the area to keep them safe, so Mila's gonna lead some gladiators to help defend the place. Aldis overheard her, something he shouldn't have been able to do since Mila told him to never come back to the guild, but he ignored her because he doesn't want her dragging her men off to fight an enemy that she doesn't know anything about, especially since it really is the Olicron, and they're more dangerous than Mila is giving them credit for. Aldis wants to deal with them alone since he's the one they're actually looking for. They've been trying to kill him since he came back to Thanalan. Mila doesn't care about any of what he's saying. He left her without a word 7 years ago, so the fact that he just walked back in and thought she'd take his advice just makes the woman mad. Since he can't talk her out of going, he just leaves, and you all head to the Silver Bazaar. The Olicron are there in force, but Mila brought more than a handful of people of her own, and the battle flows in your favor. Eventually you push the majority of the Olicron back, and Mila celebrates the victory until the leader of the group shows up and she recognizes the man. Some of her soldiers attack him before Mila can stop them, and they're killed by his guard Zana, who is clearly a bit stronger than the average members of the organization. Instead of continuing the fight, they leave, but you notice the leader is carrying the twin of Aldis' sword as you all carry your wounded away. When you get back to the guild hall, Aldis tells Mila that the reason he had tried to stop her from going was because he didn't want her to know that Leovold, their old friend, had taken over the Olicron. In the past, Aldis and Leovold had dominated in the Colosseum as the twin swords of Narthal. They were so good that even Rauban had applauded their skills, although I doubt they could have fought him. But now Leovold not only took over the Olicron, but turned the group into the most feared criminal organization in Thanalan, and that's why Aldis came back, to deal with his old friend. Mila can't believe the man turned criminal, but his desire to kill Aldis is enough proof to show that he really has broken bad. But Aldis promises to find him and deal with him so Mila won't have to. Mila apologizes to you for putting you into a battle that none of you were ready for. The only reason things hadn't turned out really bad is because Leovold didn't join in the fighting. If he had, a lot more men would have died. Still, she has to know why her friend went bad, so she has some people trying to track him down. One of these scouts have vanished, so Mila thinks he's either been captured or killed, and she wants you to search for him because if he's alive, then he likely won't be for long. The last report she got said the man was tracking the Olicron in western Thanalan, so that's your next stop. When you find the scout, the whole thing turns out to be a trap, but you bring the attackers down. The gladiator isn't all that badly hurt, so he sends you back to Mila to let her know what happened. The woman's glad to hear some good news for once, and after all the work you've done for the guild, you deserve some rest, after you see what Lulusu has for you. The woman has a message from Aldis. He wants you to meet him at the Lich Yard in Eastern Thanalan since Mila gets mad every time he comes to the guild. You find him standing in front of Mila's father's grave thinking about when the man had died 7 years ago and how he had been a true master of the sword. After he died, Mila had been forced to take over the guild, and he left her without any help, making the job even harder. He starts to say more, but in typical fashion, one of the members of the olicron shows up to interrupt you. They must have put a tracker on one of you because they show up every time you're talking to the man. This time it's Zana, Leovold's guard, who shows up. Aldis would deal with her himself, but he decides to use this moment to evaluate your skills. They prove to be far greater than hers. After you put an end to the woman, Aldis sees that with your skills you could be a real help to Mila, someone she can rely on, which is the opposite of him. But he does promise to put an end to the olicron problem. He owes it to Mila's father. You've been gone for long enough, so Aldis sends you back to the guild so Mila won't get suspicious. Not long after you get back, Mila gets some news that ticks her off. Of course, it seems like a lot of stuff makes the woman upset. However, this time she has a legit reason. Aldis has been arrested by the Brass Blades, and they claim he was plotting to kill the Sultana. She knows the claims are false because not only does Aldis not have a motive, but if he was going to kill the woman, he'd stab her, not use poison. That means the olicron used their connections to get him arrested, since they haven't been able to deal with him in the honorable ways like sneak attacks and jumping in with a whole group of people. She didn't believe Wyman when he said the olicron had that type of power, but there's no denying it now. So she plans on putting that man's knowledge to good use, and she sends you to see what else Wyman knows about the olicron. The man was expecting you, of course. After Aldis went quietly with the soldiers, he knew that Mila would be sending someone to see what he knew. Although he is surprised Aldis didn't put up a fight, considering how there is no way the olicron will let him live. Not with Leovold in charge. But you don't know anything about their history, so Wyman fills you in so you can finally stop being so clueless. Aldis and Leovold were two of the best gladiators to ever step in the arena. That much you already knew, but you didn't know how much money could be made on the fights. Apparently Aldis got greedy and set up a scheme to rig a match to make a lot of money, and the people found out about it, which got him banned from the arena. This all happened around the time Mila's dad got sick and died, which a lot of people still think the man was either killed by Aldis or killed himself because of the shame Aldis brought on the guild. True or not, those rumors only made things worse for Aldis, so he left, causing Mila to lose the two most important men in her life at the same time. As for Leovold, he tried to go solo in the arena, but he wasn't as good as Aldis, so his career was pretty much over, which led to where he is now. The story makes Aldis look bad, but having spent time with the man, the Warrior of Light doesn't exactly believe the accusations, either about the attempts on the Sultana or the fight rigging that got him expelled from the arena. But Wyman doesn't doubt what the man might have done, especially considering the type of poison they say he was caught with. The stuff is called Rauger's Bile. It's very potent stuff that only the Corpse Brigade knows how to make. He doesn't know why they'd give the stuff to Aldis, but you can go to their base in southern Thanalan and ask yourself, although I doubt they'll be willing to talk. Before you leave, Wyman tells you to let Aldis know that the two of them are even after this, and he hopes it was all worth it, whatever that means. The Corpse Brigade is not in the least bit happy to have you snooping around, and they make that known by trying to murder you, but you find the proof you need and bring it to Mila, only to find out they've sent Aldis out to be executed. But the proof you have that the olicron bought the poison should be enough to get the charges dropped, so you race off to Highbridge before it's too late. Evidence or not, the olicron had no plans on leaving this up to chance, so the executioner goes to kill Aldis anyway since he's been paid off. However, Mila hadn't planned on letting the execution go through either, and she came with enough gladiators to free the man, and she brought his sword. Of course, Aldis' original plan was to steal the headsman's axe and cut his way out of there. But of course, once he cuts his bonds, the executioner runs off, but the olicron are there in force, as well as Leovold himself, which was why Aldis let himself get taken. He was trying to draw the man out. Aldis charges off to fight his former teammate while you go help Mila deal with the rest of the olicron. Just like before, the gladiators prove to be better fighters, and Aldis defeats Leovold. The man is still mad about what happened in the arena, but not because Aldis rigged the fight. It's because he wouldn't accept losing one fight for the two of them to make a lot of money. As punishment, Leovold ruined him, making it look like he was the criminal and destroying the reputation that was so important to him. all over a little bit of money. Still, after Leovold throws himself off of the bridge instead of letting himself get arrested, it's all over. The olicron are dealt with for the most part, and you all head back to the guild where Aldis decides not to stick around since there are more members of the organization out there and they might want revenge for him ruining what they had. So he leaves, once again abandoning Mila, although he says some things to make her upset so she won't miss him as much, at least not right away. In Ul'dah at the Gladiators Guild, the Warrior of Light hears a bit of gossip. Apparently the Salt and Sworn elite have decided to share the secret training of the Paladins with the people. This might not seem all that special, but in the past, if you weren't a member of the Salt and Sworn who was on the path of becoming an officer, then you had no shot of learning the techniques of a Paladin. So the competition for earning the training was brutal. It also forced you to swear an oath to the Ul'dah Sultanate, so you couldn't be an adventurer or even fight in the Colosseum if you decided to take the job. Which is why the change in policy is such a big deal, one that the Warrior of Light is eager to take advantage of. Jinlins, the captain of the Salt and Sworn elite, is recruiting people near the Royal Promenade, so you head there to tell him that you're interested in joining. The first thing he does is tell you that a paladin doesn't fight for himself, but for others, which means you're a paladin no matter what job you choose since you're always fighting for everyone else, making you a perfect fit for learning the techniques that the paladins have been perfecting for 600 years. Unfortunately, their numbers have been shrinking as time passed, probably because of how hard it was to become a paladin in the first place, so the Sultana has been having to get mercenaries and adventurers to defend the palace for her. Apparently this all happened because of a traitor in their ranks, but that's not your problem for now, even though it did cause them to make the changes that allowed you to have a chance to become a free paladin, one that's not bound to the Sultanate. If you don't actually suck with a sword, that is. There are some ruins to the south of Little Alamigo where they have an iron brazier. Jinlins wants you to light the fire there, kill the undead that show up, and bring in their ashes to prove that you did it. An easy enough task for someone of your skill. When you finish the mission, a big, kinda creepy looking Rogadin in plate mail reveals himself to you. He knows that you're there trying to become a paladin, and he wants you to know that learning how to use a sword and wearing paladin armor doesn't actually make you one. He's a free paladin who tells you a bunch of nonsense about breaking your shackles and such before handing you a soul crystal to take to Jinlins. He does mention that the way you use your sword reminds him of someone he used to know before he heads off. When you return to Jinlins with your prize, he congratulates you on becoming a free paladin, which is basically just a paladin adventurer. He goes to give you a soul crystal of your own, but when he finds out someone gave you one, he takes it from you and lets you know that it's impure because it was stolen from the Salt and Sworn. The man who gave it to you was the traitor Jinlins has been hunting. Jinlins had wanted to become a paladin since he had first seen his predecessor as a small child. Him and his father had got caught in a riot in the city, and they would have died if his old captain hadn't saved them. After seeing how the man fought, Jinlins had trained day and night with a sword. After years of work, he had made it into the Salt and Sworn and eventually became a paladin. Then finally he became the captain. But by then the group had lost a lot of their honor because the sword Oathkeeper had been stolen. That sword was the symbol of all things paladin, and when the traitor stole it, people lost faith in the order. If they couldn't keep the sword safe, then how could they protect the Sultana? The only way to get that honor back is to catch the traitor and get the sword. Jinlins expects you to help with that, but you'll need to be stronger first, and the best way to get stronger is to make you fight stuff, so he sends you out to Lenosha to do just that. Seeing how you fight and hearing about your growing list of good deeds makes Jinlins proud to have you in the order, and since you've proven yourself, he decides to trust you with the truth. The person who stole the Oathkeeper, the traitor Soxagil, is his former captain and the man who made him want to become a paladin in the first place. A few years ago, the Sultanate military and a group called the Monitarists, a group that's a part of the Syndicate who are always causing problems in Ul'dah, fought for power. The Monitarists won, and the military lost a lot of its authority. Soxagil was still in charge of the Salt and Sworn, but he knew that his position was in danger, so he took the Oathkeeper and left, which went against every oath he took. And Jinlins is willing to kill his former mentor if that's what it takes to restore their honor. After he's put on trial, of course. However, he was a paladin for 30 years and fighting him won't be easy. Trying to bring him in alive will probably get one of you killed, so you need to train more to get ready for that day, which means more fighting. While you do that, Jinlins keeps hunting for his former teacher. While he was going through some information trying to find out a little bit more about his old master, he learned that at the same time the man became captain, a few high-ranking members of the Salt and Sworn died, but the records don't show how. He checked with some more sources and found that all of them had been poisoned, which makes Jinlins think that they were killed by the Death's Embrace, assassins that work for the monitors. The group is good, and few people even believe they exist, but good or not, they shouldn't have been able to take out that many of the Sultan Sworn, not without help from the inside, that is. And the only person who had something to gain from their deaths is Soxagil. The monitorists wanted to get rid of all of the best paladins so they could take over, which makes you wonder, how did Soxagil last for 30 years without being murdered? Unless he was the one working with the assassins. All of this makes Jinlins want to hunt the man down even more, so he decides it's time for you to undertake the trial for your armor so you'll be better equipped for the fight. For the trial, your armor is taken to 4 locations in southern Thanalan, and you have to find each piece and beat the 2 men set to guard them. Of course, it's easy for you to get, and when you make it back to Jinlins, he lets you know that he's found Soxagil. The man has agreed to meet with them at the Forgotten Springs to discuss the return of the sword. He wants you to keep all of this secret, because if the monitors find out what's going on, they'll probably try to stop you. He even wants you to travel separately so you won't draw attention. Out in the desert, you find a sword stuck in the ground at the meeting spot, but you don't see any sign of Soxagil. When Jinlin shows up with members of the Sultan Sworn, the man says that some of his friends told him that you were working with the traitor and the monitorist, which has got to be the most ridiculous story ever. But the man not only believes them, but he plans on beating you until you confess and tell him where Soxagil is. You'd have to be stupid to think that your newest member of your organization is somehow involved in a takeover plot that you think has been going on for years. But Jinlins is so focused on restoring the honor of the Paladins that he's reaching for anything that he can to make that happen, no matter how ridiculous it is. And you trying to tell him that the Sultan Sworn have lied to him doesn't go over well. He's known them longer, and he trusts them more, so he sentences you to death. Since talking didn't work, you do what you do best and take them all down. Jinlins is so confused by how a new recruit beat him that he doesn't notice the member of the Sultan Sworn aiming a bow at him. Fortunately, Soxagil steps in and saves the man's life, causing the attacker to run off. The whole event was a setup by the monitorists. Once you and Jinlins weren't useful anymore, they had decided to get rid of you both, and those Sultan Sworn were in on it. Jinlins still refuses to believe that Soxagil isn't the traitor, but his single-minded nature has always been a problem. If he had paid attention, he would have realized that all of the information he had been finding had been being handed to him. Jinlins and all of his paladins had been being manipulated by the monitorists. Soxagil was never a traitor. Jinlins finally realizes that he's right just as he passes out from the beating you gave him. Soxagil carries him off to patch him up, and he tells you to watch his back when he wakes because he's going to need someone like you for what's coming next. When Jinlins recovers and sees you again, he rightfully feels bad for trying to kill you. Have you noticed that a lot of your friends try to do that? Of course, just like you've done a few times before, you forgive the man. He lets you know that he's working on a plan to deal with the monitorists now that he knows what really happened with them and Soxagil. For the past few years, the man has been fighting them alone. When he went into hiding, he had tried to let Jinlins know what was going on, but he had so many of the monitorist agents around him that he couldn't. That was all on purpose, so they could trick Jinlins into tracking his former master down. After he had found out that Death's Embrace had been behind the deaths of a lot of Sultan Sworn, they tried to get rid of you both. Now that he knows the truth and understands that his own obsession let him get manipulated, he starts to understand that single-minded focus on a goal may not always be a good thing. You don't say. Soxagil was able to see the bigger picture the whole time, which is why he gave you the soul crystal in the first place. He wanted Jinlins to change the way Paladins operated, making them more like adventurers so they could be more open-minded and better able to think for themselves. Basically, he wanted them to take the sticks out their butts. So instead of his usual method of handling problems, Jinlins decides to be a little reckless. He's going to tell his friends that he's running away to Snowcloak to hide from the assassins, but he expects them to find him since the spies and the Sultan Sworn will rat him out. And when they show up, he's going to fight them. It sounds like a stupid plan, since he doesn't even want you to come and help him. He's gonna die. But fortunately for him, Soxagil knew about the man's plan since he didn't really try to hide it, and he has no intention of letting Jinlins fight alone. And of course you won't either. The man's shocked to see the two of you, but since the assassin sent Voidsent after him, he's not gonna turn down the help. After you make quick work of the things, you all split up to track down the assassins because they have to be nearby. It's not hard to find them, and they send so many mages and monsters at you that Jinlins wouldn't have had a chance by himself. But with the three of you working together, you deal with it. That's not the end of the monetarist by a long shot, but it should be enough to hinder them for at least a little while. But they still have the Oathkeeper, so Soxagil won't be coming back. Not until all of this is over. But fortunately for Jinlins, he does have you there to watch his back. After the events with Soxagil and the Oathkeeper, Jinlins has to admit that the work you've done has actually improved the reputation of the Paladins and made more people want to come and sign up. He actually thinks that you should go and see some of the new recruits. Hearing some words from the famous Paladin should help motivate the guys a bit. I guess he forgot that you're practically a mute, but you still head out to Camp Blue Fog anyway. When you get there, Owen, one of the Sultan Sworn, is well aware of how little you talk, so instead of giving a speech, he gets you to do a little fighting just to show off some of your techniques. Seeing how you fight is something that the recruits won't likely forget anytime soon. Back in Old Da, after Jinlins tells you to keep doing what you're doing because it's working wonders for their order, Papashan shows up and tells you that he has something he needs to talk to you about. Soxagil was still hunting the Oathkeeper, and he was letting Papashan know his progress by sending him letters. The last letter he sent claims that he found the sword, but since then he hasn't been in contact. He would have told Jinlins, but he didn't want the man to worry, so instead he wants you to help him find the lost Paladin. The last letter he sent came from the Falcon's Nest out in Kurthis, so that'll be the best place to start your search. A man called 100 Eyes, a name he probably got because he's always looking in on other people's business, knows Soxagil, and he knows that the man is very, very dead. He was killed by bandits, and 100 Eyes buried him himself near Camp Riversmeet. A young man named Constant took the death really hard, and he's been going out there to the grave a lot. You head out there yourself and find Constant being attacked by members of Death's Embrace. They undoubtedly had something to do with Soxagil's death, so you finish them off. Constant, of course, is happy that you intervened since he would have been quite dead otherwise. He knows a surprising bit about the group, and he's been warning his friends about them, but they aren't really taking him seriously. You're gonna have to ask him about that later, but you get a call from Papashan to see if you found Soxagil, so you're forced to let him know that the man was killed by Death's Embrace, likely because they were the ones who had the Oathkeeper, and when the Paladin tried to take it back, they managed to beat him. That's all just guesswork. For now, your only real lead is Constant, so you head back to Falcon's Nest to talk to him. Apparently Soxagil had told the boy about you and he's excited to finally meet you. Soxagil had saved his life when he had been attacked by wolves, and after that, he had wanted to become a paladin. Soxagil turned him down, but he finally gave in after he heard Constant asking around about the Oathkeeper. Despite training him, Soxagil must have thought he wasn't ready to fight Death's Embrace because he went to get the sword back while Constant was away. He feels bad about not being there to back the old paladin up, so he decides to get the Oathkeeper back himself. And of course you're going to help him because while he may want to be a paladin, he's definitely not, and if he runs into Death's Embrace, he will definitely die. Constant goes through Soxagil's stuff and he finds a journal with a map of the Gorgane holding. There was a spot marked on the map by the river, but nothing on the paper said why, so it makes sense to go and check it out. There's no telling what's there, so you better be ready for a fight. Constant actually found Soxagil's old leg armor and put it on, so he could have a little bit of protection to his thighs. So if he gets attacked by a Lalafell, you should be fine. At the spot, you find Soxagil's coronet, which means the man did go there. There's also a trail of frozen blood that you follow, only to end up getting attacked by members of Death's Embrace. There are a lot of them, so they likely made camp somewhere nearby, but they don't seem to have the Oathkeeper. Still, the group has done more than enough to deserve having a few new holes poked in them. The fact that they summoned a void scent to help them fight doesn't make you feel any more sympathy for putting them down. Constant doesn't do too badly in the fight, but he is a bit shocked that the two of you survived at all. But since you didn't find the Oathkeeper, it's back to Falcon's Nest you go to rest and think on what to do next. While the two of you think and plan, Constant tells you the reason he hates Death's Embrace so much. His mother was in a caravan that was raided on the road to Tailfeather, and until Soxagil told him that Death's Embrace was responsible, he had given up on figuring out who had murdered his mother. Now that he knows, he wants to stop them so they can't hurt anyone else, especially since the group was targeting the people who didn't have wealth or power, since they wouldn't be missed by anyone that mattered. Constant wants to be a hero for those people, so they'll know that there's someone looking out for them, in much the same way that there are people watching out for the rich. A friend of Constance's from Tailfeather, Grimold, sends him a message saying that he has a letter from Soxagil that he wants him to come and get. Since you don't really have any leads on the Oathkeeper, the two of you go to see what Grimold wants. The fact that the letter wasn't sent by a Moogle is weird enough, but having it sent was a part of Soxagil's will, so there's no way to figure out why it was sent in such a strange way. The letter says that the Paladin left something for Constant near the 100 Throws that'll help him become the man he was meant to be, so the two of you head off to see what the man left for him. The gift turns out to be a Paladin soul crystal and some more armor, which starts to make Constant think he's being led around by the nose. He wishes he could ask Soxagil, but it's kinda hard with him being dead, so the boy goes to his fallen mentor's grave to think. Surprisingly, Jinlin shows up there. Apparently he finally made Papa John tell him what happened, and he couldn't believe it, so he came to see for himself. Strangely enough, his presence causes your soul crystal and his to start glowing before your crystal steals the light from his. All the while, a strange robed man stares down at you all and smiles. Jinlin believes the man was watching Constant, so he's likely a member of Death's Embrace, keeping track of the person who decided to continue Soxagil's hunt for the Oathkeeper. Whatever the reason the man was spying on you all, Jinlin wants you to keep watch over Constant while he goes back to Ul'dah and tries to figure out why your soul stones did what they did. Since he knows that Death's Embrace has the Oathkeeper, Constant figures that the two of you should just start hunting them, and even if it turns out that they don't have the weapon anymore, getting rid of them would still be doing a public service since they're all pretty much horrible people. So, to start the search, he figures he should check with 100 Eyes since the man seems to know a little bit about everything. Plus, he wants to know exactly how Soxagil died. Ironically enough, the man seems reluctant to give the boy any details, which means the death was either extremely brutal or there's something else he's hiding. But the man's not willing to talk about that or anything else, so you continue your hunt elsewhere. You ask around and find out that some people from Ul'dah recently snuck onto an airship that was bringing supplies to Camp Cloudtop and tried to steal some stuff. The Knights drove them off, but they're likely still in the area. They could just be some run-of-the-mill bandits, but it's still worth checking out just in case you found your targets again. Some Knights are already out hunting for the people, and you join them, which makes your job a lot easier. You track down Death's Embrace, and when you deal with them, you find a pair of Paladin gauntlets. It's so ridiculous that each hunt the two of you have gone on has led to the discovery of more armor that Constant starts to believe that Soxagil somehow managed to plan all of this. Back at Falcon's Nest, Constant starts to wonder why the members of Death's Embrace had started acting like common bandits. It makes him wonder if Soxagil actually took the Oathkeeper back and broke the organization before he died. Broken or not, he still plans on finishing off the rest of the group, but that'll have to wait. News comes in saying that 100 Eyes has been badly wounded. The man was out and about when he got attacked by wolves. He's dying, but he wants to talk to you about something, so you rush off to see him before it's too late. He tells you to go to Soxagil's grave, dig it up, and give Constant what you find. He mutters about this last act not being enough to make up for what he's done to his sworn brothers, but it's still something at least. The grave, as everyone should have figured out by now, does not have a body in it, which makes Constant want some answers. He goes to try and get them from 100 Eyes, but the man is dead when you get back. Surprisingly enough, Papa John is there, and he takes you both out of the city to meet up with, you guessed it, Soxagil. The man had set up this Batman level plan because just finding the Oathkeeper wouldn't be enough to restore the honor of the Paladins. The sword had to be found by a worthy Paladin if it was going to mean anything, and a worthy Paladin has to be forged through trials and hardships. He can't simply be taught how to be one. The plan was for Constant to figure all of this out on his own. He hadn't planned on you interfering. Papa John takes out his soul crystal as part of Soxagil's plan, and Constance's crystal steals the light from it just like yours did to Jinlin's. This causes your crystal to glow with a strange orange light, and Constance does the same, which makes Soxagil smile. Each soul crystal represents the willpower of its holder, and when paladins are together, the other crystals may submit to the one with the strongest will. Your crystals are literally emitting conqueror's hockey at one another from One Piece. If you don't know what that is, then you have to go and watch that show, or at least read the manga, because that show is fantastic. The more paladins follow their path, the stronger their will grows, and when two strong wills clash, things could go bad, like exploding unstable ether bad. There can't be two alphas in a pack, so you and Constant have to fight to determine whose will is stronger. The boy thinks that's stupid. Paladins are supposed to defend people, not fight each other for no reason, but that doesn't mean he won't do it if that's what it takes for him to be a paladin. I respect his resolve, but the boy should have known that he couldn't beat you. The fight is over in a few heartbeats. But apparently there's more, and Jinlin walks up demanding that Soxagil tells you the whole truth. The soul crystal you had found at the 100 Throws belonged to the first paladin to wield the Oathkeeper. It used to shine brighter than any other crystal, but now both it and the sword are dull, which is why Soxagil brought you all together. He has the sword and the soul crystal, and he plans on making them both shine again by handing them over to the most dominant paladin, you. He would use his own soul crystal to reignite the weapon, but he broke his oath by leaving the Sultan sworn, so it won't work. I'm going to take a brief moment to speculate that if the Oathkeeper glows similar to soul crystals, then the weapon is probably more like the Save the Queen sword from Baja than a regular weapon. Soul crystals store will and knowledge similar to auracite, which means that like the Save the Queen, the Oathkeeper may be a weapon made entirely out of auracite, but that's just a theory. In any case, you aren't the strongest paladin. Not yet. Not until you take down Soxagil himself, and he is way stronger than Constant. That still doesn't mean he can beat the Warrior of Light. It's not like he's Xenos. With the battle done, your soul crystal takes the light from the others, and Soxagil hands you the Oathkeeper. The blade begins to glow brightly, proclaiming you the leader of the Paladins, but you don't plan on taking the job, so you hand the blade over to Jinlins. Constant is a little upset at Soxagil for being such a bad mentor, but he's happy he found a good one in you, and now he's free to serve as a free paladin just like he always wanted. And Jinlins vows to uphold the ways of the paladin, even if he never makes the Oathkeeper shine for himself. And Soxagil finally agrees to stick around and help him. The next time the Warrior of Light heads to Ul'dah to check on Jinlins, the man has something for you. It's an invitation to join a tournament at the Colosseum. The tournament is called the Ul Cup, which was started by Sasagan ul Sisagan, the very first Sultan of Ul'dah, so it's a tournament that's as old as the nation itself, but it hasn't been held in years. The Sultana started it up again, and she sent out invitations to Eorzea's best swordsman, which obviously meant you get an invitation because who wouldn't want to see you fight? Jinlins is all for you competing because the other members of the Sultan Sworn could learn a lot by seeing you in action, not to mention the prize is said to be a tome that has the secret techniques of the first captain of the Sultan Sworn, so that has drawn out a lot of great fighters. So, since you're going to compete, you have to go and head to register before it's too late. When you show your invitation, Bartholomew, one of the Sultan Sworn, gets really excited that he might get to fight you. I guess getting beat up by somebody you idolize is a prize for some people. Personally, if someone who fights gods joins a tournament that I'm in and I'm just a regular named guy, I'd probably withdraw so I could keep my dignity and my teeth. But it's too late for that now because the tournament is about to start, so you head to the Gladiators Guild where the combatants are waiting. Mila, the leader of the Gladiators Guild, is happy to see that you're doing the guild proud by competing, but it won't be as easy as you might think. Some of the best fighters in the realm are there, and they've done a lot to earn their reputations. The rules are pretty simple. If you win, you advance. If you lose, then you're out. You keep fighting one-on-one matches until there's only one person left standing. The fighters are broken into two groups, gnawed and thawed, and they fight until they reach the top of their particular group. Then the champions face off against one another. It's pretty simple. After Mila explains everything, the opening ceremony begins. Nanamo, the Sultana, gives the opening speech, announcing that it's been 100 years since the last Ul Cup, and she's decided to revive it. And all of the money that it generates will be used to help all of the refugees living in Ul'dah. When Nanamo's speech is done, Adrian, a writer for the Mithril Eye, talks about the different contestants. There's going to be everything from Sultan Sworn to Ishgardian Knights fighting, so the preliminary matches are going to be intense. They're breaking the contestants into groups of 8, meaning you'll have to win 3 fights to make it to the finals, and your very first match is against Bartholomew. The guy was looking forward to fighting you, and while he's happy to test himself against you, he's a bit upset that he's going to get eliminated in the first round because, let's be honest, he's going to lose. The man's not bad, which makes me understand why he wanted to test himself on you, but not bad still puts him way beneath you, so of course you win your first round and get to go on to fight the Bronze Bull, a gladiator who's put a lot of work into his swordsmanship. But he still loses too. Next you go up against Hendeloop from Ishgard. The knight pulls off some techniques that members of the Heavens Ward had used against you, but you beat them, and this time it's no different. You take him down, putting yourself at the top of the Thal group and earning your spot in the finals. Apparently some very strange looking Lalafellan bet a lot of money on you, and they're extremely happy that you won. Bartholomew and your other competitors aren't upset over their losses either, and they plan on taking that fight and learning from it along with the rest of your tournament matches. Also, it seems like Mila was looking for you, so you go to see what she wanted. The woman is proud of you for winning, and she's looking forward to finally getting across blades with you, after she wins her division of course. You go to watch the matches to see what you'll be up against, And apparently Confronting is in the tournament too. And he won against the local favorite, meaning he hasn't been skipping out on his training since the last time you saw him. Of course, after that he gets to fight Mila and gets thoroughly stumped because a few months of training wouldn't give the young Paladin the skill he needs to beat the leader of the Gladiators Guild. After beating Confronting, Mila gets to face off against a mystery fighter called Black Lotus, who is apparently pretty good. Actually, he's better than pretty good. He manages to beat Mila, something that nobody expected, and makes it to the final, which means he's your opponent for the championship match. Ode, one of the Lalafell who was betting on the fights, is not happy that Mila lost, because it means he lost a lot of money. His companion is even more nervous than he is because if Black Lotus beats you, then the two of them may very well lose everything, which is why you shouldn't gamble. Unless of course you rig the game, which Ode apparently has. The man seems to know how to get to the Lotus, and whatever he's planning he's already set it in motion. Mila's not happy that she lost, but the way the Lotus fought reminds her of someone else. She's not a sore loser though, so she doesn't make any excuses for a defeat. She just wants you to make sure that you win. Also, the Lotus told her that he wanted to talk to you, and he spoke like he knew you. But let's be honest, at this point, who doesn't know you? He's waiting for you at the quicksand, so you swing by to see what he wants. When you make it to the tavern, you catch sight of a Lalafell trying to convince the Lotus to withdraw from the fight. At first the man refuses, but when the Lalafell tells him something that you can't hear, the man's response implies that he might be forced to do what Ode demands. When Ode leaves, the Warrior of Light asks if anything she can do to help, but the Lotus says he can handle it. But this little meeting will have to wait until later. He leaves without saying anything else, and when you tell Mila, she says that maybe you can just talk to him in the arena during your match. However, you won't get the chance, since Black Lotus withdraws from the tournament, making you the winner by default. Everyone is upset, but right now the announcers don't have any more to tell them, so they want everyone to stay put until they figure things out. Mila already knows that something shady is going on, which is usually the case when a fighter withdraws, and she plans on figuring out what it is so you can have your match, because winning because your opponent gave up isn't even close to a real win. So the two of you start to ask around. The registrar claims that the Lotus withdrew right after you went into the arena, and he left without giving his reasons. He was headed toward Pearl Lane, so you head there to catch up with him. When you find him, it turns out that you already are very well acquainted with him. The Lotus is Aldis, a legendary gladiator who was banned from the arena and is a longtime friend of Mila's. He's fine with telling you why he withdrew, but he doesn't want you to tell anyone else. After you all dealt with leovold forever ago, Aldis left Ul'dah and wandered the land. During his travels he ran into a child, a kid orphaned by the wars, and he helped him out. Once the kid learned who Aldis was, he started following him around and trying to convince him to teach him how to use the sword, and he's been following the man ever since. The Lalafell who wanted him to withdraw thought the boy was Aldis' son and took him hostage to make the man withdraw. Whether it was his kid or not, Aldis wouldn't gamble with any child's life, so he pulled out of the tournament. Mila catches up to you and she's not surprised that the Lotus was Aldis. She recognized his fighting style and she's a little upset that he didn't even send her a letter while he was gone. Bit of advice: if you're in a relationship with a woman who teaches people how to stab people with a sword for a living, never, and I mean never, leave her messages on read. I'm just saying. She wants to know why he came back to Ul'dah, and his sole reason was because he'd heard that you became a free paladin and no one could beat you in a fight. He wanted to see if that was true. When he got back, he heard about the Ul Cup being started back up again, and he figured that if he entered, he'd get his fight with you. If not, he'd just win the thing and leave because it's not like anyone else could beat him anyway. When he decided to enter, a friend got his invitation for him, then he hit his face and boom, he was in. And all of that effort went to waste because someone wanted to make some money. When he mentions they took his kid, Mila freaks out. Not over the kidnapping. It's Ul'dah, so that type of stuff just means it's a Tuesday. But she freaks out because she thinks Aldis has a kid. He leaves out the rest of the story, partly to mess with her, and partly because he doesn't have time to explain it again. While he kept his word, the kidnappers didn't, so now he has to go rescue the boy. And he could use your help. The three of you split up and ask around to find info on the boy's location. You track the kidnappers down because you do this type of stuff for a living, and after spouting a line from Terminator saying that you want their clothes, their boots, and their chocobo, you proceed to act out the rest of the scene and thoroughly pummel them in. Mila and Aldis show up after you save the boy, who apologizes for being too weak to save himself, then vowing to train until he's as strong as you and Aldis so he can take care of himself. While you did track down the kidnappers, Aldis managed to find the evidence needed to have Ode arrested, so that problem's been taken care of too. Out of all the stuff the two of you said, the only thing Mila heard was that the kid wasn't Aldis's actual son. She's happy about that, but she tries to act like she doesn't care. With the evidence showing that Aldis was forced into withdrawing, it may be possible to get your match back on the books, especially since everyone wanted to see it. Mila rushes off to get it all set up, and it doesn't take much to make the people agree. Everyone shows up to see the match, but Aldis is forced to reveal his face to the crowd before the fighting begins. Despite the fact that he's been expelled from the arena, people still want to see the greatest swordsman of the era fight the warrior of light, so the battle is on. Nanamo gives her blessing and the two of you get to it. Godslayer faces off against the Sword of Null, and the man proves to be a warrior worthy of his title. He's a king among warriors, but what is a king to a god? With the battle done, even though he lost, Aldis has to admit that the fight was everything he had hoped for. But you're the champion of the Ul Cup, meaning you've won the prize, a tome with the techniques of the first leader of the Sultan Sworn. There's just one small problem. It doesn't exist. The whole thing was a ruse to lure the best fighters to the arena so people could see different techniques and have something to work toward, just like the first Sultan had done. The tradition had stopped when the royal house no longer had the money to fund it, but now that they have the resources again, Papashan figures that all of Eorzea could benefit from what the fighters learn in the arena. That way they'll be better prepared to face off against all of the threats that attack their nation. While that's all well and good, you still deserve a prize, so Nanamo gives you the right to ask her for anything you want. And what you want is for her to pardon Aldis. He'd been banished for taking bribes, something she easily forgives, allowing the Sword of Null to once again freely compete in the arena. It's been a little while since the Ul Cup, and it's only right that the Warrior of Light swings back by Ul'dah to check on her friends. Jinlins lets you know that while you were away, the Sultan Sworn started working with the Gladiators Guild to help make the city safer. They even started training together now so they can hone each other's skills. A lot of the changes were Mila's idea, which made Jinlins get a newfound respect for the woman. But lately she's been kinda out of it. She's not talking as much, and it seems like something's always bothering her. He wanted to ask her if she was okay, but he doesn't really know her all that well, so he didn't want to overstep. But the two of you are good friends, so you asking her personal questions wouldn't really be a problem. Sure enough, it doesn't take too much prodding for her to open up to you. Her issue, obviously, is Aldis. Since he's been pardoned, he's been in Ul'dah more, but Mila still can't figure out what's going on in his head. Not surprisingly, the man shows up while you're talking about him, and instead of being in his usual gear, the man is dressed like a samurai. After losing to you in the Ul Cup, he decided to enhance his training, and he had heard about the old samurai who had embarrassed a lot of gladiators at the arena, so he figured he'd go to the Far East and learn from some of them. It's funny how Musasai is still influencing things even after his death. Since you're there, he wants to go a few rounds with you, just to see how well he does after his training. Of course, the fight can't happen in the arena since it's not an official match, and Mila wants you to do it away from the city anyway. That way the guards won't show up when the two of you start jumping around and swinging swords at each other. The two of you meet up outside of the city, and Aldis gets down in a familiar stance, proving that he did learn a little bit about being a samurai. But as he looks at you, your aura is so strong that he doesn't even need to attack to know that he doesn't stand a chance against you now. He can't understand how you got so powerful since the last time you met, but it's not really a secret. You fought for people you cared about, and that made you push yourself to become even more powerful to protect them. The man doesn't even waste time drawing his sword since he knows that fighting you as he is will be a guaranteed loss, so he leaves and goes to think alone. Mila has never seen Aldis back down from a fight, even if he thought he'd lose, but there's no point in trying to guess the man's feelings, so you just head back to the guild. Aldis shows up there a little later, once again wearing his old clothes. Apparently he's already given up on the whole samurai thing. He had thought about what you said about protecting something important to you so you could get stronger, and it made him think about what mattered to him the most. It took him a while to figure it all out, but now he knows what's truly important to him, what he really wants to fight for. He looks Mila in the eyes and tells her the truth that he's been keeping to himself for so long. The thing that he wants to protect the most is the Gladiators Guild. That's not what Mila expected to hear, and she's a little disappointed, But the old guildmaster had treated Aldis like a son, and the guild was one of the few places that he truly felt at home. And he wants to be there from now on to help out. None of this was what Mila wanted, but since Aldis wants to stay and be a part of the guild, then he can. She doesn't have a problem with that, as long as he's fine starting off as a brand new member of the guild, something that Aldis is more than happy to do. This concludes the Paladin story, at least for now. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and ding that notification bell. And if you want to buy me a coffee for my work, sign up to become a member of the channel. Until next time, guys. Later.